Welcome to Mythos AI, your source for Cliff's Notes on complex subjects. Join Anna and Phil for yet another engaging conversation.
Today we're going deep on Eric Schmidt.
Yeah, a deep dive into someone who's been right at the center of some really massive shifts in technology.
I mean, you can't talk about the rise of Google, the rise of AI, really, without bumping into his influence everywhere you turn.
And the story that biographers tell
Which is really where we're drawing most of this from.
paints a fascinating picture, I think, of a guy who's been both a visionary and kind of like this incredibly savvy operator in a space that changes at, lightning speed.
Right, so it's this blend of like being able to see where things are going and then also being able to be like, all right, but how do we actually execute on that? How do we build a company? How do we, make those decisions?
We make them happen. Yeah.
Exactly. So to understand that trajectory, we kind of have to go back to the beginning.
Yeah, back to his roots.
Because you can see, even in his early work in computer networking, the seeds of what he'd go on to do with Google.
His time at Princeton, UC Berkeley.
It wasn't just about the technical side of it.
Oh, absolutely.
It was about, and I think this is key to understanding Schmidt, it was about this understanding of the potential of technology to connect.
And not just to connect, but to connect people with information.
Which, come on, that's Google in a nutshell right there.
Exactly. It's about making information accessible, useful. I mean, that's been the driving force behind so much of what we've seen in tech over the last few decades.
And you see that playing out in his early roles, Xerox, PRX, Sun Microsystems.
Cutting edge places.
Absolutely. I mean, he was right there on the front lines of where technology was going.
Not just observing either, but actively shaping it.
Right. And it's worth highlighting his work with Java during that time.
Yeah, because that's not just some technical detail.
No, not at all.
I mean, Java, for people who might not be familiar, was absolutely essential in shaping how the internet evolved.
Like the interactive dynamic web we take for granted. That wouldn't exist without Java.
Exactly. And here's Schmidt, deeply involved in its development, showing this really deep grasp of software engineering at a time when that whole world was exploding.
It's funny, though, because for as much success as he had, it wasn't all, smooth sailing.
Yeah, the biography really doesn't shy away from the challenges, does it?
No. I mean, his time-leading Novell, that was a whole different beast.
Novell was a company trying to find its footing in a landscape that was changing by the day.
They were kind of the kings of networking for a hot minute there.
They were, and then suddenly they weren't.
And that's got to be a tough experience, right?
Oh, absolutely. But it was also probably the perfect training ground for what he'd face at Google.
Because you're talking about navigating intense competition, making tough decisions, understanding what it takes to adapt in a market that's moving incredibly fast.
And I think that's what Larry and Sergey saw in him when they brought him in as CEO in 2001.
Because remember, they were brilliant, they had this amazing vision for Google, but they also recognized they needed someone who could bring that vision down to earth a bit, someone who could build a company, a sustainable company.
And Schmidt, he had the experience, the scars even, to navigate that kind of explosive growth.
And it was explosive. I mean, he comes in 2001, and in just a few short years, he's taking Google public.
2004, that IPO.
It was a watershed moment, not just for Google, but for the entire tech industry.
It's like, all right, this is serious. These guys are here to stay, and they're playing a different game.
But what's interesting, and what I think often gets overlooked, is that Schmidt's impact on Google went way beyond just the financial stuff, right?
Oh, absolutely. He understood that to build a company that could achieve what Google was set to achieve, you needed something more than just a good product.
It was about culture, wasn't it?
Culture and this relentless focus on innovation, on giving people the space to experiment, to take risks.
And the 70-20-10 rule, I mean, that became legendary.
70% on your core work, 20% on related projects, but then that 10%, that was for the wild stuff.
The stuff that might go nowhere, but also might change the world.
And look what came out of that. Gmail, Google Maps.
I mean, those were born out of that 10% time.
It's a testament to this idea that if you create the right environment, if you empower people to think differently, amazing things can happen.
But here's the thing, and this is where I think Schmidt's genius really comes in. He balanced that encouragement of innovation with this incredibly sharp business sense.
Oh yeah, he was never one to let the blue sky thinking get in the way of building a sustainable, profitable business.
He understood the tech, but he also understood the business, and that's where things like AdWords and AdSense come in.
Right, these monetization strategies that, let's be honest, a lot of people thought wouldn't work.
You can't make money off of advertising on the internet, everyone said.
But Schmidt saw it differently. He saw the potential, and he built the platforms that would become the engine for Google's massive growth.
And it's that dual focus, the innovation, the business savvy that allowed them to expand into so many different areas.
And it's also what led to, I think, the inevitable need to rethink the structure of the company itself, which is how we get to the alphabet era.
Because Google was no longer just Google. It was this sprawling, multi-headed, everything.
They needed a way to manage that growth, to give those different ventures room to breathe, to innovate.
And that's where Schmidt, again, steps in 2015, orchestrating this massive restructuring, creating Alphabet as this parent company.
It was brilliant, honestly. It gave them the flexibility to invest in all these different areas. Self-driving cars with Waymo, life sciences with Verily, without those projects getting bogged down by the sheer scale of Google.
And you see this pattern throughout his career, this ability to adapt, to see what's coming next, and position the company, whether it's Google or later Alphabet, to lead.
He's always been a few steps ahead.
And nowhere is that more evident than in his embrace of artificial intelligence.
Yeah, his story when it comes to AI is fascinating because he was talking about its potential way back when most people were still stuck on, Deep Blue and chess-playing computers.
He saw the bigger picture. He understood that AI wasn't just about creating machines that could beat humans at games. It was about something much more fundamental, much more transformative.
And he put his money where his mouth was, investing heavily in AI research and development within Google, building up the teams, the infrastructure that would lay the groundwork for so much of what we're seeing today.
And that's part of it, right? It's one thing to have a vision. It's another thing entirely to build the environment where that vision can actually become reality.
And he did that. I mean, the acquisition of DeepMind, that was huge.
Massive. DeepMind, for anyone who doesn't know, they were already doing some groundbreaking work in AI, particularly in areas like deep learning and reinforcement learning.
And their development of AlphaGo, the AI that beat a world champion Go player, I mean, that was a game changer.
It captured the public's imagination in a way that I don't think anything had before.
It was like, all right, AI isn't just some science fiction fantasy anymore. It's real, and it's capable of some pretty incredible
It
things.
was a watershed moment.
But what I find even more interesting, in a way, is that alongside those headline-grabbing achievements, Schmidt was also pushing for the integration of machine learning into Google's core products.
The stuff we use every day.
Exactly. Search algorithms, voice recognition, even just the way Google Assistant interacts with us, those were all being shaped by AI and machine learning under his watch.
It was this quiet revolution happening in the background.
And it's easy to overlook because it's so seamless. But those changes have had a profound impact on how we interact with technology on a daily basis.
I mean, think about it. Just a few years ago, voice search was clunky. It barely worked. And now
Now it's like we take it for granted. We talk to our devices and they understand us.
it's incredible.
And it speaks to Schmidt's ability to see not just the potential of a technology, but also its practical applications, how it could be used to improve the products and services that people use every day.
Right.
And it hasn't been without its bumps, right? I mean, the shift to an AI-powered world has come with its own set of challenges and concerns.
Well, absolutely. And this is where I think Schmidt's thinking gets really interesting because he's not just a tech enthusiast. He's someone who's deeply thoughtful about the impact of technology on society.
And that comes through really clearly in his post-Google work, this turn towards philanthropy and these broader societal challenges.
So we're talking about Schmidt Futures, right?
Exactly. I mean, that's a huge part of his focus now, using his wealth and his platform to support, well, it's a pretty broad mandate.
It is, but there's a thread that runs through all of it.
Yeah, I think it's about empowering people who are trying to make a real-world impact, whether it's through science, technology, or just innovative problem solving.
And it's not just about throwing money at problems. It's about fostering collaboration, connecting people who might not otherwise cross paths, and providing the support system for them to take risks.
Absolutely. And it spans a pretty incredible range, from funding AI ethics research, which we know is huge right now,
Absolutely crucial as AI becomes more powerful.
right, to supporting efforts to combat climate change, to backing early career scientists and entrepreneurs.
And this really gets to the heart of what Schmidt Futures is all about, which is this idea that the biggest challenges we face as a society require a multifaceted approach. You can't solve climate change with just technology. You can't address inequality with just policy changes. It takes this holistic view, bringing different perspectives and expertise to the table.
And it requires, I think, a willingness to think outside the box, to try things that haven't been done before, which is something Schmidt has always championed.
And that approach, that commitment to tackling complex challenges, it extends beyond his philanthropic work too, right?
Sure.
I mean, look at his involvement with the National Security Commission on Artificial Intelligence.
PNSCAI, yeah, that was a huge deal.
Because AI is not just about making our lives more convenient or optimizing business processes. It has massive implications for national security, for economic competitiveness, for global power dynamics. Really,
And the NSCAI was tasked with grappling with all of that, figuring out how the U.S. can maintain its leadership in this space, while also ensuring that AI is developed and used responsibly.
and Schmidt has been very vocal about the stakes, hasn't he?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he's been sounding the alarm about the potential for AI to be used for malicious purposes, whether it's by state actors or by bad actors within our own societies.
Misinformation being a huge one.
Right. The ability to create and spread misinformation using AI-powered tools, that's a very real threat and one that we're already seeing play out in various ways.
And it gets to this fundamental tension with AI, which is that it's a tool. And like any tool, it can be used for good or for ill. It all depends on the intentions of the people wielding it.
And that's why this push for ethical AI development is so important and why Schmidt has been such a strong advocate for it.
Transparency, accountability,
Yeah.
oversight, those are all crucial.
Because we can't just assume that AI will be used for good. We have to build in those safeguards, those ethical frameworks right from the start.
And he's been particularly critical of how some companies, especially in the social media space, have deployed AI.
Yeah, there's a real concern that algorithms are being used in ways that amplify misinformation, exacerbate existing divisions, and prioritize profits over the well-being of users.
And he's been calling for greater regulation, more ethical oversight of these companies, arguing that they have a responsibility to consider the broader societal impact of the technologies they're creating.
Which is a conversation that's only going to become more important as AI becomes more powerful and more integrated into our lives.
Because we're talking about technologies that have the potential to shape our perceptions, influence our behaviors, even erode our trust in institutions.
It's a huge responsibility, and one that I think Schmidt takes very seriously.
And it's not just about mitigating risks, right? It's also about ensuring that AI is used to address those big societal challenges we were talking about earlier.
Using AI to combat climate change, to improve healthcare outcomes, to create more equitable educational opportunities, there's so much potential there.
And that's reflected in his other ventures as well, like Schmidt Sciences, which we touched on earlier.
Right, which is doing some really interesting work, particularly in this space of interdisciplinary research, breaking down the silos between different fields and encouraging collaboration.
Because the biggest problems rarely fit neatly into one academic discipline.
Exactly. So Schmidt Sciences is funding research that brings together experts in AI, life sciences, climate science, you name it, to work on problems like renewable energy, pandemic preparedness, sustainable agriculture.
It's about recognizing that the most promising solutions often come from unexpected places, from those intersections between different fields of knowledge.
And that, I think, gets at the core of what Eric Schmidt seems to be all about, this belief in the power of human ingenuity to solve problems, to create a better future.
But doing so responsibly, ethically, with a clear-eyed view of the potential risks and unintended consequences.
Because technology is only as good as the people who wield it. It's a lot to grapple with, and I think it speaks to how he sees his role, not just as a technologist, but as someone who's trying to shape the trajectory of these incredibly powerful tools.
Right, it's almost like he's wrestling with the implications of what he helped create.
And that's where that sense of responsibility comes in, right? Because he's seen firsthand how quickly things can change, how a technology that starts out with the best intentions can be used in ways that are deeply problematic.
And that brings us to, I think, a really important aspect of his legacy, which is this emphasis on ethical considerations, on asking those hard questions about the impact of technology on society.
Because it's easy to get caught up in the excitement of innovation, to focus on what's possible without fully considering the potential downsides.
Especially when you're talking about something as transformative as AI, which has the potential to reshape so many aspects of our lives.
And that's why it's so crucial to have people like Schmidt who are willing to speak out, to raise those concerns, to push for greater transparency and accountability.
Because if we don't, we risk creating a future where technology is used to exacerbate existing inequalities, to erode privacy, to undermine democratic values.
And that's the opposite of what technology should be doing.
It should be about empowering people, expanding opportunities, creating a more just and equitable world.
And that's a vision that I think Schmidt genuinely believes in, this idea that technology can be a force for good, but only if we're intentional about how we develop it and how we use it.
And that's ultimately, I think, what makes his story so compelling, this journey from those early days of computer networking to the forefront of the AI revolution. It's a reminder that technology is never neutral,
It's always shaped by the values and the choices of the people who create it.
and that we all have a role to play in shaping the future of technology, whether we're technologists, policymakers, or just citizens of this increasingly digital world.
Because the decisions we make today will have profound consequences for the kind of world we leave behind.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the life and work of Eric Schmidt, I think it's worth reflecting on that sense of responsibility, that call to action, because it's a message that resonates far beyond the world of technology. It's about recognizing the power we have to shape the future, and to do so in a way that reflects our values and our aspirations for a better world.
Thanks for listening to Mythos AI. Stay tuned for more concise insights. And remember to hit the like button and subscribe for future episodes.